So now let's move on to our second topic of the day, student motivation. So we've talked all three key aspects of a course: learning outcomes, teaching and learning activities, lecturing and other things you do, assessment, right? These three form the strong triangle that we showed. These three support each other, you've got it going. But student motivation is also something very important which impacts learning a lot. After all, we are after the students' learning. Now, motivation hugely impacts learning. If there's little motivation to learn, little learning will occur. You can plan your course, you can have your learning outcomes, you can do whatever. If the student is not motivated to learn, there's not a whole lot you can do. Even if you are the best instructor and you have all the good things at heart and you want the students to learn. And there will be always some students who are not motivated, and there's not a whole lot an instructor can do about them. But there is a lot of students who are not demotivated, but they need a push in their motivation. So if we want the students to achieve learning goals, we must help them we must enhance their motivation to the extent possible. There's always going to be some students who are not interested. Some students end up in computer science, but they really hate computer science. There's nothing you can do. But there's a lot of students who we can push to help to increase their motivation, and that's what we're going to discuss. So we will focus on motivation to achieve learning outcomes of the course. Motivation is, of course, much bigger thing. There is overall motivation to do well, to live, etc., etc. There's an overall motivation is a big psychological thing, right? But that's a much bigger issue. We are only going to discuss very briefly motivation, what we can do to enhance motivation so students will work to achieve the learning outcomes. All right. So student motivation, what is motivation? In general, it generates, directs, and sustains what the student do to learn, right? If it is motivated, that the student will do activities to learn. So it generates essentially goal-directed effort, and it leads to increased effort and energy, leads persistence, initiation, cognitive processes. Your mind is more engaged and active when you're doing it, and it often enhances performance. So a lot of learning and this will happen. Much better learning will happen if the student is motivated. The higher the level of motivation, we can expect the student to achieve higher levels of learning. Most students can be motivated to various degrees through some techniques that we can use. Okay, so motivation, again, motivation is a very big thing, as I said, right? I'm boiling it down to some key essentials which may help us teach a course better. Okay, so motivation of a person for achieving a goal is influenced by these two key factors. One is the subjective value of the goal, and the other is expectations for successful attainment of the goal. Okay, and that's what we have to do. We'll discuss these a little bit more. We have to help students attach high value to the learning goals of this course. And we have to reassure them that they can expect to achieve the goals. So these two conditions, the subjective value of the goal, it's subjective, right? The student may not have thought, so we help the student think and find the value that is there in the course. After all courses are valuable. Otherwise, why would we want to teach them? So there is value in those learning. We have to help the students appreciate it, so the students' subjective value increases. And we have to keep reassuring them that, look, you can achieve these goals. So if you can do that, the motivation of the student to achieve those learning goals that you have established for your course will be higher. So the student's goal We know that the students' learning goals, typically, they are, of course, first and foremost around performance goals. They do what is necessary to appear smart in class, get a decent grade, get a praise, whatever CGPA, whatever is, performance oriented. They also have learning goals. There's they want to gain competence in programming, in hacking, in doing something, in building a system. They like that confidence that comes with those skills. But students may have multiple goals that may be in conflict sometimes. Learning, of course, is one of them. Hopefully, they've come in a college. The learning is one of the goals. But they have, of course, social goals. They want to play. They want to make friends. They have some affective goals. They want to stimulation. They want to have fun. They want to laugh, etc. They may have health goals. There may be family goals. We don't know. So there's multiple types. They will definitely have multiple goals. If an activity satisfies more than one goal, motivation to do it is higher. Okay, that's the reason I'm pointing this out. Our goal is learning and to help students learn. But if we understand that students do have other goals, and if we can do something that will satisfy multiple goals of the students, then you can expect that learning would be higher. So, for example, most students have goals like learning, making friends, engaging in some stimulating activity. For such group of students, if it is for such types of students, if we give a group project with some kind of competition that can make it more stimulating, that can be a good activity. So if we weave that in our course, then we can find that students are likely to find it more valuable to do that. So motivation to pursue goals is influenced by values the students will attach to these goals, right? And the value is really a subjective value. I've already discussed that. Okay, it's completely personal and it is subjective. Okay, there are three types of values. Just for understanding, we don't need to get deeper, but there is an attainment value, a satisfaction that one gets from accomplishment, just mastery. Intrinsic value, a satisfaction that the person gets from doing the task, from understanding that comes when somebody has understood something. There is an intrinsic value. You understand physics, you understand how things are working. Hey, it's great. You understand something, how an operating system is working, that's great. And of course, there's instrumental value, how it helps. One gets the extrinsic rewards like job, praise, higher salary, good grade, higher CGPA, you name it. Okay. So just to understand value that anyone will attach to a goal would have a combination of these three, sometimes very high instrumental value, sometimes there's very high intrinsic value, etc. You have to see. If a student does not find any of these three sources of value for the course goals, the student is likely to not have much motivation. Okay, so we ought to be able to show to the student that there is some intrinsic value. For example, you'll understand the limits of computing in a theory course. You will understand what can be done and what cannot be done. Or instrumental, for operating system, we can say you will really understand all these computers you use, what's going on underneath. You will get a glimpse of it. And we can, of course, tell them instrumental value. If you're teaching, you're learning programming, the better programmer you are, you get better jobs. You are learning databases. The better you get, you can design better systems, etc., etc. And you can attainment. You can say projects you'll get certificates, etc., etc. So we have to understand somewhat about our students. And we have to show them what values they can expect, one of these three types, or a combination. Okay. Generally, multiple values are attached by a person to a goal, right? So for example, and again, the same theme, if you work hard to learn, a student will work hard to learn in a course because, he's attaching value. Oh, I'll get a good grade. So that's the instrumental value. I'll develop strong skills to get a good job, again, instrumental value. Solve challenging problems, that may be more attainment value, intrinsic value, right? So the student may have multiple values attached to a goal. Right? And the more you can attach to the goals of your course, learning outcomes of your course, the better motivation the student will have. Okay, the values don't need to conflict. And just to keep in mind, the values change. So just because at the start of the course there is some values the students have indicated doesn't mean that they will stay that way. It's often the case that the student may start from instrumental value and then may develop intrinsic value. Instrumental value, okay, I'll learn all this stuff so I will get a better job, or so I can write in my CV or something. But then the student may develop genuine interest in the subject and start digging deeper. Okay, it happens all the time. So keep in mind that values are not static. They change, and you may be the instrument of that change as well. A student's motivation will increase if what we want them to learn helps them achieve their goals, particularly those to which they attach high value. All right. The second point, so this was about goals and values to the goals. The second is expectancy. So the value itself is insufficient to motivate behavior. So people are motivated to pursue goals for which they attach value if they believe they can achieve them. If they do not expect to successfully achieve the goals, even though the goals may be of high value, the motivation can fall. Right? So the goal must be of high value, but the student must also believe that he or she can achieve them. So the student must hold a positive outcome expectancy to be motivated to learn. So if he believes that if I do X, Y, Z in this thing, I can get a decent grade, he's likely to be motivated to do those things. And if he believes, hey, this is too hard, no matter what I do, I will not pass this course, I will not get a decent grade, etc., the motivation is likely to fail. And I'm sure you've seen both categories of students in your life. And but all these beliefs are beliefs. Some may be in reality, but this is where we have to assure that if you do this, you can, expectancy is there. You're not doomed by any means. You put in the effort, you do this, you can reach some level. And of course, there is this other aspect which I think is beyond a teacher's realm in general, but for positive expectancy, student must also believe in his or her capability. Okay, now this is a larger issue, that if the student is capable of actually doing the actions that are needed. So this is about confidence and other things. And prior experience also influences expectancy. If the student has been, in school always said, oh, hey, you're dumb, you cannot do it, etc., etc. Perhaps the positive expectancy is hard for the student to come back. Okay, so expectancy is really the student's belief in whether he or she can do it. Okay, so this is, as I said, somewhat beyond the realm of us teachers. But the other two that we discussed, expectancy and value, that's very much in our realm. We have to show them value in what we are teaching, and we have to convince them that the course is designed in a manner that if they put in the effort that is required in that course, they can attain the learning outcomes. And the last point is about the role of learning environment. Right? Besides value and expectancy, how supportive is the environment also affects motivation. Okay, I'll just use the word supportive to unsupportive. If the student perceives the environment as supportive, motivation will be enhanced, right? If the student asks a question and we laugh at the question and we say how stupid that question is, it's not a supportive environment for students to ask questions. Students will stop asking questions. If we admonish them for every wrong thing they do, they will just cover their wrong things. Right? So we understand these things. We understand how we can make it supportive to the student. We have to understand about the student, what kind of support he or she needs, and provide that support, and certainly, support the confidence and build, all those kinds of things we know. So essentially, we have three factors at play for student motivation. The value for the learning goals of this course. What value does the student attach to the learning goals, outcomes of this course? Expectancy that the student can achieve those learning outcomes, and the nature of environment. Right? These three will determine the level of motivation the student will have to work towards achieving the learning outcomes. So therefore, now I'll discuss a few techniques that we can use for enhancing learning outcomes. So the motivation is high when the student sees value in achieving the learning outcomes, believes that she can achieve them, and finds the learning environment supportive. So that's what we have to do. Show them value, the learning outcomes, convince them, and design our course and assessment in a manner that the student who's putting in the necessary effort and can achieve it to a reasonable degree, and provide them whatever support we can. Right? So what are some steps the teachers can take? So first is for value, connect the course, the subject, the learning outcomes to the student interests and goals, the importance. So when we teach a course, how does it fit in the overall program? Many of us often don't discuss it. We come, this is the course we are going to teach. But hey, look, he's in a BTech program, 4 semesters. This is one course, one of the 5 courses the student is doing. So first, just an overall picture of how does these learning outcomes fit in the overall program? How does these learning outcomes help him achieve the outcomes for the whole program, etc. That can give the student a bit more perspective and value that these learning outcomes are indeed helping him towards a certain higher level goal. Okay, so we should try to connect the course and the subject and the learning outcomes to the student's interest. And if it is directly applicable to, for example, problem solving, for example, getting internships or jobs, etc., we should show them, we should articulate them and show them why by good achievement this is how it can benefit. Show the value of achieving higher level of skills in the course to students' future professional lives. Hey, look, if you achieve all these learning outcomes in an operating system course, you're going to be considered as a guru. People will lap you up for systems kind of jobs which pay well, for example. Okay. If you understand this very well and you explain if you achieve this in a theory course, so you have to, in a theory course, you probably have to attach it to the values, intrinsic value and understanding value. But also you can attach, hey, look, if you're good, then maybe if you want to do an MTech later on, those will be very helpful. So we have to find out, and all of us in our courses, we have some sense of why these learning outcomes are important beyond our discipline, why students should learn that. We ought to explain it to them. Connect the courses to real-world situations and problems. This is hard for many of us, but to the extent possible, all the examples where you can apply the knowledge that you're learning in the course to real-world problems. The examples we derive are from real-world situations that they can relate to, always help improve student motivation because they see the value beyond the course into the world in which they live. show enthusiasm, passion, love for the subject. This just sort of rubs on the student that, hey, look, this guy is so interested and so excited, must be good, must be valuable. All right. You can position the course at appropriate level of difficulty so the students can learn. Right. So now the first was about value, and now some steps I'm discussing here, what you can do to improve the expectancy. So please make sure that it is posted as the appropriate level of difficulty. The students learn, they are challenged to learn more, but they shouldn't despair that they can't do it. So therefore, assignments, etc., should have appropriate difficulty level. They should be attainable, but yet valuable and challenging. Provide early success opportunities to build their confidence that, hey, look, all right, so this is simple, some initial simple problems, they did it, they feel good. Okay, yes, you can do it. So you provide early success opportunities. Provide guidelines for self-assessment so students can assess themselves, are they doing well or not. Provide feedback, we've discussed in informative assessment. And maybe you can even have some discussion on how to effectively study this course. So, students can share information. And you provide them as much support as you probably can. Okay. So to summarize on the student motivation, motivation matters. So only when students are motivated will a student actually apply herself, which is to do something and to think. Then they apply themselves. The three main factors that will influence student motivation is the value of the learning goals of the course, expectancy of being able to achieve those goals, the learning goals, and the support that will be available in the student's journey of learning. To achieve our teaching goal, which is learning by students, we should take whatever steps possible for each of these three factors. Okay. Okay, just last two slides. Now, this is a completely different this thing. I thought I'll just spend couple of minutes on this. I've seen often all the time in computer science and in all disciplines, not just computer science, we consider teaching and research as two separate activities. We think research is about creating knowledge in our subjects, which is computer science, electrical, physics, what have you. But teaching can also be a research activity. Education and teaching is also an object of research. There are many journals and conferences on education. So if you want to do only research in your field of study, computer science, electrical, sociology, what have you, then, hey, look, you just do that. But you're also an educator. So you can also say, hey, while I will do that, I am also interested in doing a little bit of research in education itself. And if you do that, then teaching can also be a research activity. All right, that's the point I want to make. With some background study on research papers in teaching and education, and it's not hard to do some research in education. You try some new ideas of teaching. Collect suitable data, analyze. There is a small little work. You've gotten some knowledge that this technique that you thought of, what is the effectiveness of it? That's new knowledge. It's research. And the reason I'm saying is there is a dearth of research in higher education from India. I've rarely seen papers on this approach is very effective for this kind of students. We do very little research on understanding our students. I mean, there's all kinds of research globally available, but not from India, in the Indian setup, about Indian students, our ecosystem and our constraints. So I think the field is open. If we start treating research, teaching also as one of our additional research activities, it's a bona fide research activity. And you can publish the work in good quality journals and conferences. So it's as good as any other research activity. And as I said, in India, we have such a large education system. We do so much education and very little research on education.